What's up, my wizards? It's Deb from SBMTG down there on the YouTube.com. We like magic. And it is the holiday season, which means you're probably spending a lot of money on gifts and stuff like that. You're strapped for cash. I know that we are, here at least. So with that in mind, I figured instead of giving you one budget deck, I just tell you all the best budget cards in Standard to brew around. Today, I'm going to give you the top 10 cards in Standard for $1 or less. Couple of ground rules before we get started here, but just a couple. Rule number one, I'm going to use prices from both TCG Player and MTG Goldfish today, and if the card in question is over $1 on either one of those sites, it's not eligible for the list. That's important. Number two, and more importantly, I think, for the flavor of the list, is that I want these to be cards that are build-arounds only. So really, really strong rares that you can't really build around, I don't want to include. I mostly want really interesting rares that we can basically build from the top down an entire deck around. So with that in mind, those are the only two rules. Let's go ahead and talk about some Magic cards. Start the list. My number 10 is Harmless Offering right here. The only reason it's all the way down here at number 10 is that it's one of the only cards on the list that you can't build a deck around right this second. There's not a whole lot of great stuff in Standard that you can donate to your opponent right now. We did just lose Demonic Pact, I don't have that anymore. So there's really nothing like game-breaking that we can donate to them. But while this is in Standard, and even while it's in Modern, obviously, which will be forever, keep an eye on it, because Wizards could print something super donatable any day now, even in Aether Revolt. So just keep your eye on this thing and hoard a few copies, because you never know when a cool deck's going to come up with Harmless Offering. Keep yourself a couple copies, all I'm saying. My number 9 is Triskaidekaphobia. Painlands are now out of the format. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Remember a couple months ago, it was like, can't play Triskaidekaphobia, Painlands exist. And not every single deck played Painlands, but most did. Now we don't have the problem, so let's play Triskaidekaphobia, right? And Tree of Perdition is going to be in the format the whole time that this card's in the format. So maybe we should revisit Triskaidekaphobia because it's totally viable now. We've got other life drain and gain stuff going on in this format. It could be totally worth taking another look at Triskaidekaphobia. The card's much stronger now. My number 8 is Odric, Lunarch Marshal. Guy's still around. He's in Shadows over Innistrad. He's going to be in the format forever. But Odric is really cool, especially now. We just got Aerial Responder in Kaladesh, man. He's doing so well with Odric on curve, too. 3 abilities into a turn 4 Odric is cool. And we still got Lone Rider and Vampire Cutthroat on, lower parts of the curve. So this thing is really cool. We've got the rats for 2 mana that have Skulk and Death Touch. So super easy, super budget to build around Odric right now, and a whole lot of fun. And I think that there's less mass removal. Languish isn't in the format anymore. We don't even see as much Radiant Flames as we used to, So this card might actually be poised to do a thing, possibly, especially with all the other cards that you build around it. It's just a solid card, and it's surrounded by a bunch of other solid cards. So maybe Odric's good. My number 7 is Ever After. I just really like Reanimation. I love Reanimator decks. You guys know Marty Reanimator is actually one of the most popular decks that I've released in the past couple of months. So thanks for that, by the way. But I love Ever After, and so do a whole lot of players, and it's really, really cheap right now. And we're in a format that's kind of good with it. We've got Madness and Delirium in the format, and to facilitate those strategies, Wizards just printed a bunch of cards that let us just dump cards into the graveyard, So this is actually not super bad right now. We just dump a huge dude in the graveyard and get him back, turn 6, along with another huge creature, just so much value is available with this thing right now. My number 6 is Aetherflux Reservoir, right here. If you go by TCG Player prices, then you can get this and a Paradoxical Outcome for less than $1. And if you go by TCG Player prices, and Goldfish prices, really, very close, then you can get a playset of Outcomes, a playset of Reservoirs, a playset of Bone Saws, and a playset of Cathar's Shield for under $5, just cumulatively. All together. So that's the shell of the deck right there. You just add on to it, you got a pretty sweet combo deck. Just a bunch of 0-cost artifacts, play them, Paradoxical Outcome, bring them back to your hand, draw a bunch of cards, play them again, storm out with Reservoir. A lot of people know what the Cheerios deck does by now, but Reservoir really, really sunk in price when that deck didn't become a real mainstream popular, tournament deck. So, by a result of that, you can get these cards for super cheap, and the deck is still really fun to play. My number 5 is Deploy the Gatewatch, and the only reason that it and number 4, by the way, aren't a little higher up the list is because that the decks that you build around them are going to be expensive, even though this card is not that expensive. And again, same thing will go with number 4. You'll see what I mean in a minute. But the decks that you're going to build around this are going to include a bunch of Planeswalkers. You're going to train like 14 and 22 planeswalkers. So the deck will not be cheap. It'll probably have an expensive mana base too, you know. So you can't say that Deploy the Gatewatch is a strictly budget card, because even though it's only going to cost you like 95 cents, the deck you build around it's going to be super hella expensive. But in and of itself, just in a vacuum, the card is very, very cheap. And if you wanted to, you could build a cheap Planeswalkers deck, you know, just Planeswalker pack Planeswalkers and maybe a couple of the $5 Planeswalkers like Obnixilis and a couple other things. So, you know, it could totally work out. You could probably build an under $100 Planeswalker Deploy the Gatewatch deck. I have probably just said that I will do that. Honestly, probably people will ask me in the comments to do exactly that. So we'll look into it. But Deploy the Gatewatch in and of itself, very cheap card right now. Steal, honestly. I mean, the card's pretty good. My number 4 is Bring to Light, and I've already brought this up, but you know, the deck that you build around this is going to be kind of expensive. 4 or 5 color Bring to Light with a pretty expensive mana base and some really powerful cards. So the deck you build around it going to be kind of dollars, you know. But Bring to Light itself right now is less than 50 cents on both sites. That's really, really good. So the card is still in Standard. When I first saw that a Bring to Light deck had gotten like 6th place at a Star City Invitational qualifier just recently, I was like, wait, Bring to Light's in Standard? Oh yeah, it is in Standard. It's got Radiance or whatever, so, or Converge, whatever it is. It's Converge. The beauty of Bring to Light is that you can play a bunch of 1 and 2 ofs, weird cards for situational things, and like totally make it work. Great toolbox tutor right here, and I'm excited about building with this again now that I've remembered. We're in the top 3 now, and my number 3 is Goblin Dark Dwellers. This card is so good. This card has always been good, and it's got like its own little fan base, but it's slowly, steadily dropped in price. It came out at like $6, then went to 5, and then went to 3 forever. And now it's sitting at right about $1. It's like 95 cents, I think, on TCG Player, and 98 cents on Goldfish. So right at the limit there, but totally within the margin. So Goblin Dark Dwellers is so awesome. It's so easy to just jam a deck full of like 2 and 3 mana instants and sorceries, cast them on turns 2 or 3, and then recast them right alongside this huge body that has menace. Like Goblin Dark Dwellers is just like so easy to build around and so obviously good that, and again, the card could just skyrocket like any day depending on what they print. They print something at 3 mana that's just ridiculous. You can expect Goblin Dark Dwellers to maybe take a jump. Pro players really like this card, and a lot of players do, by extension, you know. Just because it obviously, free spells are always great, and they come tacked along a giant body at a decent price. So Goblin Dark Dwellers, always a fantastic card that you can pick up for super cheap. My number 2 is Cryptolith Rite. Card is still great. You know, we've still got things like Loam Dryad and a bunch of other 1-mana creatures in the format, and even, you know, 2-mana creatures can work with Rite pretty well too. And it just leads to things like, you know, turn 3 Verdurous Gearhulk, or like turn 4 6-mana huge thing, or like Burn from Within for 1 million in the mid game, you know. Like Cryptolith Rite just has so many good options, even though we don't have like Secure the Waste anymore. The card still has a bunch of stuff you can do with it. And, you know, 7-mana plays on turn 4, like World Breaker on turn 4, totally doable all day. Cryptolith Rite, still solid card. Pick her up. Now, before I get on to my number 1, I'm going to talk about some honorable mentions, and there's a lot of them. So I'm going to go over these real quick and give editing dev a lot of work to do, and I'm going to throw it over to voiceover dev right now. Sup, voiceover dev. Here's a lot of honorable mentions that I'm going to run through hella fast. This is Eerie Interlude right here, just obvious. You know, just fill your deck with a bunch of ETB triggers, and then repeat like 4 or 5 of them at instant speed, all at the same time. Just awesome. Harness the Storm is a card that a lot of people want me and a lot of other YouTubers to build with. We're just all kind of waiting on the right moment to strike, but Harness could be really good with the printing of just 1 or 2 decent pieces. So, you know, Harness is good. Hedron Alignment is a card that was really good when we had Delve in the format. Not so much anymore, but another card you got to be on the lookout for. Because if they print, you know, a certain mechanic or a certain card, you know, just a standalone card, then Hedron Alignment could suddenly be good. I was going to say again, but just be good, period. It never was quite great. We've also got Heron's Grace Champion still in this format, and it's only like 40 cents, and it's great at the top end of a Green-White Humans deck, along with something like Sigarda, you know, in the next slot. But Heron's Grace Champion, super affordable and just a blowout instant speed card. Madcap Experiment is another one of those cards, I keep saying this, but another one of those cards that can print something really interesting with and make it worth playing. Right now we have a fun combo with like Consulate Surveillance and Madcap Experiment. You know, just put like 1 Metalwork Colossus in your deck, go find it with Madcap Experiment. And then don't take any damage. You just remove 2 energy counters from surveillance. So that's a fun thing. But Madcap Experiment, a lot of players have their eye on. Master Trinketeer is another one. There's a lot of these, by the way. Just another warning. Master Trinketeer is another one that is really, really good. With servos and thopters, we got a lot of those in the format. And if you're gonna play Frontier, I know, boo, but if you're gonna play Frontier, there's a bunch of cards that have good interactions with thopters or create thopters. So he's also good in that format. Niblis of Frost is always awesome. Like, there were people playing this at the Pro Tour and the sideboard and lamenting that it wasn't in the main deck. It was so good and it just came in all the time. So Niblis of Frost does a lot of work. Good card for very, very cheap. Omnath is still lurking in this format. Omnath Ramp could be still a deck, and a lot of players have told me that they've had success at F&M with their own versions of Omnath Ramp. So Omnath still around. Play that thing. Ovia Pashiri, that thing is brand new and really good. Just a 1-drop that creates tokens for you. Like, what's not to like about Ovia? And it's like 15 cents. Cigar de Zade, if you want to build the Flash Equipments deck, is around, and it's hella cheap. I said hella again. I'm going to stop. Splendid Reclamation is still around. It's also just about 15 cents, and they could print something crazy with that any second, and it can actually be good in, like, Modern if the conditions are right. So check that out. Stonehaven Outfitter is still around too, and that's going to be around for a minute. Just another thing for the Equipments deck. There's so many really good budget cards in Standard right now. And there were even a couple of things that are under $1 that I didn't think quite fit on the list because of the build-around thing, you know. Syndicate Trafficker and Hanwar Militia Captain are both cards that almost feel like build-arounds, but not quite. They're more looking for, like, synergistic pieces. Or synergistic decks that work, you know, as a whole. They're not the one thing that you build around in the deck, but they're still very, very cheap, and they're both awesome cards. And finally, before we get to number 1, some cards that were just barely out of price range, but if you're budget-minded, will still be pretty good, and that's Seasons Past, which is like $1.25 right now, and still awesome. Metalwork Colossus is like $1.15 on MTG Goldfish, but you can get it for under $1 on TCG Player. And Metalwork Colossus is obviously awesome. There's like a bunch of ways to build around that right now in the format. Voldaren Pariah was like $1.29, I think. And Voldaren Pariah, still great. Just a bunch of small creatures, some zombies and stuff. And Voldaren Pariah on like turn 3 or 4. It's totally possible. And then the Gitrog Monster is like $1.50 right now. A lot of people's like favorite card in the format right now. A lot of casual players love Gitrog Monster. They always have an eye towards making it work. And maybe you want to pick up a couple of copies, because any day now, again, it could work. They could just print something that's good with Gitrog Monster, and it really wouldn't be that hard for them to print something. Like, this card is so obviously great that it wouldn't take much of a push to make it, you know, very Standard viable on a competitive level. Longest honorable mention section ever. But again, there's so many awesome cards in Standard right now that you could brew around, and that if they just print 1 or 2 strong pieces for, could take off. So a lot of this is sort of a, you know, market watch, you know, watch out for these cards because you never know. So keep that in mind too. You know, this is almost speculation in a way, but a lot of these cards you can build around right now and, you know, make a deck that can win F&M. So, and with that in mind, here's a card that can definitely do that. My number 1 is Dynavolt Tower. You can get it for about 98 cents on Goldfish and 95 cents on TCG Player. And the card is super awesome, just like Dark Dwellers. It's very easy to build a deck with a bunch of instants and sorceries and, you know, just win off of Dynavolt Tower, you know? And you can play things that give you energy like Harness Lightning and the black cards that give you energy, Attune with Ether as well. So there's just a lot of really good options right now with Dynavolt Tower, and there have been a few lists that have top 8'd like Star City Games events and stuff. So it's not like it's unheard of for this card to do well at like actual big, relatively big tournaments. So, you know, just for pretty cheap, you can snap up some 4 Dynavolt Towers, less than $5 you get a playset of towers. And then from there, you just fill your deck with like Galvanic Bombardments and Harness Lightnings and Anticipates and Glimmer of Genius and stuff like that. And for less than, you know, $25, whatever, you've got yourself a workable deck. And then from there, you can add in like Bedlam Revelers or Thing in the Ice, whatever. You know, still for under $50, you've got yourself a deck that can win you an event. So Dynavolt Tower, so good whether you're picking off small creatures or planeswalkers or hitting them in the face over and over. Just Tower is so good, and any deck can sandwich it in as long as it's playing enough instants or sorceries. So just go crazy and build 4 or 5 color Tower if you got the money and the cards, you know. So I love Dynavolt Tower. I really want to see this card be more of a thing, but honestly, for cards that are under $1, it's already done a lot of work in this format. So those are the top 10 cards and like 30 honorable mentions that you can play with in Standard for under $1 right now while you're out buying Christmas gifts and stuff. I know holiday crunch is real, believe me. We know. But with, just try some of these out. I know that a lot of people want to see us build decks with these, especially Harness the Storm. I mentioned that in the honorable mentions. There's not a video that goes by that somebody in the comments is not like, hey, try Harness the Storm. I'm trying. You just got to wait on a couple of pieces. But try all this out. Let me know how you feel, and did I miss anything? What else is under $1 that you think could have made the list? Interested in that. And I will, I guess, see you guys later. If you enjoyed the video, like the video down there. Make sure you click the bell next to the subscribe button down there. That'll make sure that you get notifications from me. Do all the YouTube stuff, and I'll see you guys later. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.